everyone. So I'm going to take a few minutes in this video to go over the sample APA essay that is here in this week's module. So hopefully you've already watched the video and gone over the PowerPoint over just basic APA format. Because in that PowerPoint I go through all of the design elements as well as a little bit about how to deal with your sources in APA format. And so now we're going to look at an actual essay in APA format so you can see how all of those things look in the essay. Now, I have pasted the essay below this video, but it's obviously just one continuous thing of text. You can't see where each page is, but you can still get a general idea of the things that I'm going to be talking about and pointing out to you. But there's also a link in blue under the video that if you click on it, it will open up the sample essay in a Word document. So you can follow along however way you choose, whether looking at the Word document itself and listening to the video or looking at what's pasted underneath the video. But just know that if you're looking at what's pasted under the video, you still at least want to, look at the actual essay at some point so that you can see how each page looks. Okay? So the first thing I want to sort of point out are some of the design elements that I listed in the basic APA format PowerPoint. So I talked about margins, how there are 1-inch margins all around on each side of the page, right? And so you can see, if you scroll through, that is exactly what we have here. 1-inch margin on the left, the bottom, the right, and the top. We talked about the spacing, how the entire document is double spaced. So when you look at it in the Word document, you can see, starting from the title page all the way through to the references, every single part of the essay is double spaced. I also mentioned that there are no extra spaces anywhere. So if you are looking through the essay, you can see that every time this author, from the title on page 2, right, we have the title centered on page 2, Guided Imagery and Progressive Muscle Relaxation and Group Psychotherapy. The title is centered and in bold, and then immediately underneath the title, we have the introductory paragraph. There's no extra space. There's no extra space in between the paragraphs. There's no extra space between a paragraph and the heading for the next section. There's no extra spaces. If you look at the references page, again, all the references are listed. There's no extra spaces between any of the entries. Okay. The font, this one is in Calibri 11. If you look at it as a Word document, that's just the default in Microsoft Word, the version that I have, so that's what this is in. But just remember that, you have a little more freedom with fonts these days with APA format, but you definitely want to stick to one that is easy to read, and you want to stick to that 11 or 12 point font size. Okay. We talked about page numbers. So if you look up in the header of each page, up in the top right hand corner, you'll see a page number. And that's it, right? Just 1. Next page, just 2. Alright, so if you're unsure how to get a page number up in the header like that so that you don't have to type it in on every page, because you don't want to type it in on every page. That'll mess things up, actually. You want to create an actual page number function. And you'll do that, if you're in Microsoft Word, you go to Insert, and then over towards the left, you'll see, where did it go? I'm sorry, I lost it for a second. Almost midway over, you'll see page number, and you click on that, and you'll want it at the top of the page, and then you'll want it all the way over to the right. Right, so just make sure that it's plain number 3 when you get to it, the third one on the list. Setting up page numbers by themselves is really not that difficult, but if you ever are uncertain, certainly reach out to me or, another instructor. We can walk you through how to get the page numbers set up. Remember, there's nothing else that goes in the header now. We do not need a running head on student submissions in APA format, just that page number. We talked about the title page. So let's take a look at the title page. Remember, the title page does get a page number. It has the number 1 up in the top right-hand corner. We talked about how after you have the page number set up, when you click to type on the title page, you'll hit the enter button 3 or 4 times, and then you'll want to center your text, and in bold, you'll type out the title of your essay. Then you'll hit enter 2 times, take the boldface off so that it's just plain, and you'll type your name, enter, your school, enter, the course number and course name, enter, the instructor's name, enter, and the assignment due date. So you can see here, we have that title centered and in bold, guided imagery and progressive muscle relaxation and group psychotherapy. And then she hit the enter key twice, enter, enter, and then her name, Jane Smith, enter, ATA College, next line, English 200, English composition, Mrs. Lester Trosher, October 1st, 2020. That's all that goes on your title page. That's all you should have. Okay? We talked about the fact that there's no abstract. So there's no abstract that takes up page 2. Now page 2, it goes directly into the essay. You center the title of the essay and put it in bold. Remember, that's a level 1 heading in APA format. Hit enter, take it out of center mode, go back to align left, get it out of boldface, hit the tab key, and immediately start your introductory paragraph. Okay? This particular essay, if you scroll through, it does have several levels. It has some headings and subheadings. So after, the introduction there, we have our first section, our first part of the essay, guided imagery. And then that section has a subsection, features of guided imagery. And then the next subsection, guided imagery in group psychotherapy. And then we come to the next main section, progressive muscle relaxation, on page 5. So you can see that this essay is sort of broken down into sections and then subsections within each section. And remember, you don't have to memorize how these headings are supposed to be formatted, the headings and subheadings. Go back to the PowerPoint where I showed you, or go to apa.org or the Purdue Online Writing Lab, and they will walk you through how to format level 1, level 2, level 3, and if you need level 4 and level 5, they'll show you how to do that as well. All right. Let's see. The reference page, we also talked about how that should be formatted. So if you go to page 10, that's where our references begin in this essay. If you notice on page 9, though, the concluding paragraph started at the bottom of page 8 and goes on to page 9 for like 5 or 6 lines. And then there's all that blank white space on the rest of page 9. Remember, you should not start your references list there in that blank space. Your references start on the next page. So in this case, it starts on page 10. Remember, we have the word references in bold and centered at the top. No extra space after that. Just hit the enter key once. Take it out of center, go back to align left. Take it out of boldface, and you immediately start typing your first entry. Remember, the whole thing is double-spaced, just like the rest of the essay. They are arranged, all the entries, all the sources are arranged alphabetically according to the first word of each entry. So most entries will begin with an author's last name, but not all of them. If it doesn't have an author, then it has to start with something else, right? Whatever it starts with, the first word is what you use to determine where it goes on the list. So here on the first page of references, on page 10, almost, a lot of these have an author's last name, but there's two that don't. So if you look, the second entry that's listed, American Psychological Association, 2017, that didn't have an author. So whatever this type of source was, Jane knew that this entry was supposed to start with American Psychological Association. So she used the word American to figure out where it goes on her list. Right at the bottom of page 10, we have another source that did not have an author, Freebird Meditations. Whatever type of source this is, Jane figured out that it was supposed to be formatted in this way, and that the entry began with Freebird Meditations. So she used the word Freebird to figure out where it goes on the list, right? Okay. Look at right above Freebird Meditations, we have a source that starts with Cunningham, A.J., and if you look, that entry took up 3 lines of text. Remember, any entry that takes up more than 1 line of text needs a hanging indent. So the entries always start in over at the left-hand margin. If it comes down to a second line, then you indent. If it has a third line, you also indent that one. If it has a fourth line, you also indent that one. When you finally get to the end of the entry, you hit enter, and your cursor comes back out to the left-hand side. That's where you'll start the next entry, over on the left. So don't forget the hanging indent. We're going to talk a little bit more about the reference page here in a minute, but just look at it visually to make sure that you understand how it should look. Double space, references at the top, alphabetized, no extra spaces, hanging indent, all of that stuff. Okay? We also talked about how APA format deals with your sources. And we learned that no matter how you use source information, whether it's summarized, paraphrased, or directly quoted, you have to give credit to that source by including an in-text citation. That's the parentheses that we see. What goes in the parentheses is based on how the entry begins. So once you have your reference entry created, you know what goes in the parentheses. Because what goes in the parentheses up in the body of the essay is the first word or words, if it's a title, of the entry, a comma, and the year of publication. And if you go back through this essay, you can see all the numerous places where she includes an in-text citation. So if we go back up to the beginning on page 2, in the very first paragraph, she has information, very first sentence, she used information from the American Psychological Association. A majority of Americans experience stress in their daily lives. Boom, parentheses. American Psychological Association, comma, 2017. There's no author for this source. And as we saw when we looked at the reference page, it begins, that entry on the reference page began with American Psychological Association, so that's what she put in the parentheses here for the citation. Notice too that, there's no quotes around that sentence, a majority of Americans experience stress in their daily lives. That means she either summarized that whole section from APA, or she paraphrased a small section of it. All we know is that idea was not her own. She got that information from that website. Right? You come down a little bit further. 2 techniques that have been associated with reduced stress and increased relaxation in psychotherapy contexts are guided imagery and progressive muscle relaxation. She got that information from a source, so right there, immediately after that, she gives us the citation. And in the parentheses, she has Geigen and Luhr, 2007. Again, there's no quotation marks around anything there, So we know that she didn't take it word for word. She either summarized or paraphrased that information from that source. If it was taken word for word, there would be quotation marks around that quote. And here's something that you need to be aware of. Let's say that she did take that word for word, and she forgot to put the quotation marks. She did provide the citation, but it's still borderline plagiarism because she has not indicated to us that those are not her exact words. She still would have needed to put quotation marks around them, even though she also has the citation. So please keep that in mind. If you're taking it word for word, a direct quote from a source, you have to have the quotation marks around it, and you have to have the citation. You got to have both. If you paraphrased it and put it in your own words, or summarized it, obviously then there's no quotation marks, but you still got to have that citation every time. If you go through, you can see all the places where she has cited source information. Every time she uses material that she found in one of her sources, she gives the citation for it, boom, right then and there. She does not put a blanket citation at the end of a paragraph. She puts the citation immediately when she uses the source. Okay? You can see, if you go through each one of them, how all of them match up exactly to the entry for that source on the references page. Remember, we provide the citations first to let our readers know that we got that information from a source, that it's not our own, right? We're giving credit to where it's due. But we also provide that citation so that the reader can come to the reference page and find all of the information for that source, all the information they would need to go find that source on their own and read it if they chose to do so. So that's why it matches up exactly. And remember, I said in the lesson on basic APA format, one of the biggest favors you can do for yourself is create the reference entry for each of your sources first. Because you're going to have to anyway. So you might as well create it first. That way you already know how that entry begins and what will need to go in the parentheses every time you cite that source. Also, if you were to go through the essay and match everything up, you would see that every source used in her essay has an entry on the reference page. And every source that's listed on the reference page is cited at least once in the body of the essay. There are no sources on this reference page that she didn't really end up using. If you really don't end up using that source, you need to take it off the reference page. It does not belong there anymore. So I'm not going to spend I think I've covered pretty much what I wanted to point out to you guys with this essay. The only other thing that might be helpful to you is to actually read some of this essay, read through some of her paragraphs to see how she introduces her source information, how she integrates it into her paragraph, how she makes it flow with her own writing, how she explains each time she uses a source. She doesn't just give us information and move on. She provides the source information and then connects it to the rest of the paragraph and what her main point is. We're going to talk more about that, integrating sources and what you need to do once you actually start drafting the essay. We're going to talk about that a little later on. But if you go ahead and read through some of this essay, you'll already get a good feel for how to start incorporating the information from your sources. Right now, though, what you need to pay most attention to are the design elements and how those look on the page, and how the citations look, how the citations function, and how they match up with the reference page. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, just use this as a guide, sort of. If you have any questions as you're, drafting your research paper. Otherwise, you guys are free to move on to the next lesson.